Khamzat Chimaev is one of the most overrated and overhyped fighters in the UFC, and I am saying that as a Chimaev fan. What we've seen from him is some dominant victories over people who are not at his level, and then two incredibly close decisions against a past prime Gilbert Burns and a short notice Kamaru Usman. And along with him, there are some other up-and-coming, undefeated, highly sought-after talents in the UFC who are getting all the shine from the higher-ups in the UFC, but are incredibly overrated. And if they weren't being spoon-fed easy matchups to buff up their stats and to make them look really good, they would have been beaten by now by the top-tier guys. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And so today, we are going to be exploring some of the most overrated fighters in the UFC. Guys, if you wouldn't mind, before I jump into it, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, helps grow the channel. And let me know in the comments who you think the most overrated fighter is in the UFC. So, as I mentioned, Khamzat Chimaev is probably the guy that jumps to the top of my head. And I say this as a Chimaev fan. I actually want that guy to be champion. And I want him to be the boogeyman, the guy that is indestructible, the guy that everybody is scared to fight. But the fact that he is so inactive, and the last two times he fought anybody difficult, it seemed as though he wilted under pressure, right? He still ended up coming out with the victory against Usman. But again, short notice, 3 rounds, it looked like Usman was catching him. Some even thought Usman won that fight. And then Gilbert Burns had the biggest wow moment when he dropped him. Now, it's not all Chimaev's fault, right? He did have a lot of things to deal with, lots of sicknesses, COVID-19, all of this kind of stuff. Kind of put the brakes on what was a train of a guy coming up in the UFC. But ever since he's sort of had these, stalling moments, there's so many rumors surrounding everything that's going on. The close fight with Gilbert, the close fight with Usman. He didn't really get his way when, after beating Usman, he was next in line for a title. And now he's going to be facing Robert Whittaker. If he gets through him in a dominant fashion, if he gets through him in a relatively easy fashion, I take back everything I said. But this is going to be his toughest test to this point, in my opinion, in Saudi Arabia. 5 rounds against Robert Whittaker, a guy who never loses 2 in a row. He's always down for a scrap, always makes it a close dogfight. So if Chimaev can make that look easy, I take this back. But as of right now, the number 1 on my list for overrated MMA fighters, overrated UFC fighters, is Khamzat Chimaev. And let me counteract that with who was considered to be Chimaev's counterpart, which was Shavkat Rakhmonov, right? This guy was also considered to be an incredible prospect, but he walked the walk every single time. He fought everybody in front of him. He won with a finish every single time in relatively dominant fashion. He is the guy that Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to be, who's just coming through and clearing out anyone and everyone at any point in time. Now, the second biggest overrated fighter, and I actually hope these two guys fight each other one day. We saw him on the UFC 300 card, on the main card, mind you, Nickal. Now look, the guy is clearly super talented, and I truly believe that he could give almost anybody in the middleweight division a run for their money with his kind of dominant wrestling. And granted, he's only had a few professional MMA fights. I think he said in his post-fight interview this was his 6th fight, right? Which, okay, I can forgive that a little bit. But if it's only his 6th fight, he's not fighting anybody important. He was the biggest betting gap on that entire card. He was supposed to beat Brundage, and the last few people he's fought, they were lined up for him to win, so he could, build up his repertoire, build up his win list, kind of build him up as a star. A lot of people are calling him the Khabib of the USA, like the American Khabib. That's what a lot of people are saying, right? But like, again, we haven't seen him tested yet. We haven't seen him put in there against any type of adversity. We haven't seen him fight anyone who has a decent grappling pedigree yet, right? So it's like, sure, I can get that he is really good. I can see that he's going to be an incredible fighter. But just right now, we haven't seen him fight anybody worth talking about. Another guy that jumps off the page to me is Joe Pfyfer, and he actually got exposed. He got exposed a couple months ago when he fought Jack the Joker Hermanson, right? Everybody expected him to just go in there and KO Jack. Jack ended up winning the decision. And so he got exposed. Not saying he can't be a huge talent, but people were saying that, oh, this guy hits harder than Francis Ngannou. This guy's the next big thing. He's going to be huge. All of this kind of stuff. And yet, when it came down to it, when he fought someone actually decent, a veteran with good experience, again, he cracked under the pressure. He wasn't able to take it forward. Frankly, another guy on this list that I find to be overrated, and he's actually a really good striker, but Ian Garry, right? Ian Garry is another undefeated prospect in the UFC. But once again, I just feel like Ian Garry, he's been spoon-fed opponents that he can beat, right? Like all people who are going to keep the fight standing, who are going to never go for a takedown, hardly ever do the clinch, give the guy his space so they can put striker versus striker. And, you know, this is kind of a theme, right? Anybody who has potential star quality lately, it seems that they don't have to do anything remotely, I don't want to call it not difficult, right? Like, this is fighting. Of course it's difficult, right? But they're being put up and kind of hand-picked matches, right? That are the most favorable to them ever, right? Like even Alex Pereira, and I don't want to, I don't think Pereira is overrated, by the way. Like even Pereira, like his route to get to the title, he was fast-tracked. He was only put against strikers. He didn't really face any wrestlers, right? Anybody who could take him down and hold him down. I'm not saying Alex Pereira is overrated, but I'm just saying, like, his path to get to that initial title shot against Izzy was easier than most other people have had to do. Ian Garry, we're talking the same kind of thing, right? Like, he's been fed guys who don't really wrestle, who don't really grapple. You know, he was given Neil Magny, he was given Jeff Neal. Neil Magny is usually the guy that the UFC gives to people who they want to kind of boost their, you know, make them kind of the next big thing, right? And he usually stands and strikes for the most part. And then you look at, you know, Jeff Neal, again, a boxing style, standing and striking, but he faced a little bit of adversity there. Some people thought that Jeff Neal won that fight. I don't. I thought Ian Garry absolutely won that fight. But, you know, to put him against someone who can actually grapple, who can actually wrestle, I don't know how he's going to do against you know, a Shavkat Rakhmonov. I don't know how he would do against Khamzat Chimaev, somebody who can actually, like, take him down, hold him down, keep him there. Now, the last guy that's on my list, and he is some of y'all's GOAT. You guys think this guy is one of the greatest to have ever done it. But honestly, I just feel like his accomplishments, and by the way, he's in the Hall of Fame too, right? So that is something, but I just think, like, among GOATs, he's not at the top, right? Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo is a great fighter. He is one of the greatest to have ever done it. Probably in the top 20, for sure. But you guys put him way higher on the list than he absolutely needs to be. Jose Aldo, his accomplishments were good for the time that he was in. But let's remember that he got beat by Max Holloway, Conor McGregor, Peter Yan, and Alexander Volkanovski relatively easily. And so when I look at this, everybody says, oh, but he had a huge amount of title defenses, and he was the reigning champion for a really long time, and all of these other kind of things. Yes, but any time it mattered, he lost. Anytime his back was against the wall, anytime it mattered, anytime he went up against someone who is now considered one of the best, he lost. And people will say, oh, but he was out of his prime. He wasn't. Jose Aldo is 37 right now. When he fought Volkanovski, he was 31. When he fought Conor, he was like 29. When he fought Max, he was 30. Something like that. Like, he was in his prime. These are the prime years of any male on the planet. So I don't want people telling me that he wasn't in his prime. He was in his prime, just when it was important, he lost, right? And it doesn't count the stuff people accomplished in the WEC or any other organization outside the UFC. It doesn't count. It just doesn't. It's not the same caliber. It's not the same high level of competition, right? So it's like, if somebody's the karate combat champion, if somebody's a champion in like another league, but it's not the same league as the UFC, like, you can't count that towards their accomplishments inside the UFC. You just can't. So, all in all, guys, I just think that these are some of the like craziest, most overrated fighters in the UFC. And the shadiest, most overrated of them all, as of right now, in my opinion, is someone I actually like, which is Khamzat Chimaev. And I want him to win, and I want him to be a dominant champion. I just don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, that's all for me today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. And if you haven't, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps the algorithm, helps with the channel. Have a great day.